name's John Cordy, and you may want to continue watching this video if you want to see me burn a bridge with probably one of the biggest gear companies in the world. Right, anyway, seriously though, I guess we should probably talk about my verdict on the GT1000 Core, and I want to talk about some things which probably you've not seen anyone else mentioning. First of all, I think it's worth saying that this is part of the conversation, the Line 6HX Stomp. So they were kind of probably one of the first companies to try and do this sort of thing, although I guess the atomic amplifier is sort of in this vein as well. I'm probably drawing a blank on some other bits and pieces. I mean, even the Yamaha Magic Stomp, trying to put, you know, a bunch of different amps in a smallish unit like this. Actually, to be fair, they've been doing this for ages, haven't they, all of the companies. So anyway, this is the more recent thing which seems to me to be an influence on a few different bits and pieces, whether that's the Fractal Audio FM3, the Boss GT1000 Core, or whatever else might be coming up in the future. Obviously, I'm an HX Stomp and Helix user, so that's worth saying at the front of this, and it's also worth saying at the front of this that I had a feeling that the menus, because it's a Boss product, they're generally fairly menu heavy and they have their own sort of language of menus and patches and all that sort of stuff, which historically I've not been a massive fan of. I've had the Boss MS3 and the RC300 looper, so up front it's worth saying that I've had that kind of feeling. Things they didn't tell you, they talk about having 24 simultaneous effects. What they don't tell you is that 4 of those are EQ and 4 of those are simple delays, as I understand it anyway. So you've got a semi-fixed signal chain where you've got all these options and stuff, but there's only certain blocks where you have a full range of options. So you've got a master delay block where you've got what you'd expect, i.e., you know, you've got tape delays, reverse delays, shimmer delays and all that sort of stuff. And then you've got 4 other delay blocks where you can just have a simple delay. And basically in those simple delays you have essentially a mix, a feedback, a high cut and a low cut and that sort of stuff, you know, so like a really simple delay block. And then obviously an EQ is an EQ, so you've got 4 EQ blocks which are kind of fixed. You can move them around the chain, but they are always EQ blocks as I understand it. Maybe you do want 4 additional simple delays and maybe you do want 4 EQs. For me personally, I'm not too good at maths, but I feel like that's 8 blocks that realistically I'm not using for most of my presets, so that instantly takes us down to 16 blocks. Another 2 blocks are noise suppressors, so that's 10 blocks that we've potentially not got too much use out of. What you've essentially got is basically 3 effects blocks where you can do pretty much whatever you want with. You've got 1 master delay block where you can do whatever you want with that, and then you've got 2 drive blocks where you can do what you want with those. But in terms of actual flexibility and 24 flexible blocks, that's not what we're dealing with here. So for instance with the Pod Go, there's certain blocks which are fixed, like the volume pedal and the wah pedal. You've got certain things you can do with them in the EQ blocks. Potentially people are going to say, well, I didn't want a volume pedal which is always on, I'd rather have an additional, I don't know, delay block or something. So in terms of true flexibility, it's not quite what you're getting. And that might not be a big issue, but I guess it's worth knowing, because if one of your bigger marketing kind of pushes is that you can have 24 simultaneous effects blocks, it probably does matter that a bunch of those are things like noise suppressors, which are always there and present, and EQ blocks, which you can't do anything else with. So there's 10 blocks which, to me, as a guitarist, I'm not particularly interested in. Probably dealing closer to something like 14 simultaneous blocks, and 2 of those are amps. So yeah, I think the other thing worth talking about is the screen. So we're used to seeing this kind of thing, or I should say we were. Now we've got things like the Hotone Ampero, we've got things like the Nux MG300, we've got things like Moore stuff. I'd say all of those have a better display than this, and none of those are expensive units, relatively. This display to me looks like more like something we'd have had on like the Pod XT, which is not necessarily a huge deal if the display is not a big deal to you. I think there are plenty of examples of more effective displays, and even in the lower end of the market there are. So this is a £600 device. The Nux MG300 is however much that costs. And to me, the display of the Nux MG300 is kind of more innovative and more useful stuff. than this, which is frankly kind of quite flat, and to me more like a Nokia 3310 display than something from 2020. That said, the build quality of it seems decent. How does it actually sound? I think it sounds pretty good, as you'd expect, but I think most things these days kind of do, and that seems to me to be across the board true, whether it's a cheaper unit or a more expensive unit. So a lot of fuss was made about it being a big unit made into a smaller unit. The issue for me is that there aren't many people using that big unit anyway. Certainly outside of paid demos, I don't think I've ever seen anyone using a GT1000. Could be wrong. Maybe I'm watching the wrong guitarists, but I don't think their flagship product is used by that many people as it is, and I don't know what the reason is for that. Maybe you have thoughts on that. But for kind of one of the biggest gear companies, and obviously everyone has at some point owned a Boss pedal, I don't feel like I've seen many people using a GT1000, and the fact that they've brought that product into a smaller product is not nothing, but given that I don't know many people that use the bigger product anyway. So yeah, I guess that's that bridge burn. I'm not going to be keeping a GT1000 Core, and the main reason is that I find the interface is a little bit tricky to get your head around. I feel like there's other units where I can spend time in their interface and in that world and kind of just enjoy it more and play guitar more. That's essentially what I'm interested in when I sit down with a product, whatever it is. Is it making me want to play guitar, or am I stuck in a menu system? This is a thing that I kind of criticised the FM3 for. In the initial kind of stages, it was a big step up of learning, but even now at least that's a big screen, a colour screen, and I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I feel like in the guitar world I could take it for granted that there are companies doing better things with a display than that. But yeah, you're going to hear me playing through it for one last time at the start of this video probably, but yeah, I think that's where my explorations end with this thing. As I expected, I was expecting really to have a little bit of trouble with the menu system. I'm not having any trouble getting it to sound half decent. I think default things are a little bit spiky and present, and if you get in there and go to the EQ and kind of tame things back a little bit, one of your 4 EQs that you have, by the way, or always optional. If you do the thing that they do kind of stock with the Line 6 Helix stuff now, you know, tame things at around the 8 kHz level, I think you get some of those more warm and classic tones that probably some of us are used to. I think in some of the demos that I've seen, people have said that it sounds kind of dry and harsh, and I think that is what we're probably hearing, is that top end just creeping through a bit. But with any modeler, I think that tends to be the case. If you open things up above 8 kHz and have a lot of gain, generally these things do tend to sound a little bit fizzy. But yeah, the delays sound good, the reverb sound good. I think also they kind of made a little bit of a bold decision about where they've put the cab sims. So essentially you have to put it into recording mode to be able to change the cab sims, which is a bold choice, I'd say. I think most of the companies now make the decision to put an amp and a cab block next to each other, and you can switch cabs as much as you like. Boss have made the relatively bold decision to put the cab sim way at the end of the chain, and you have to be in a certain mode to be able to change that. Now you can make your own judgment as to whether that's a good idea or not. Personally, I like to have my cab and my amp next to each other so that I can make those tweaks, I think. So yeah, I think that's about all I have to say on it. Good to see another competitor in the market, and maybe that's going to push things along further. But I'd be interested to see, are there going to be people that continue to use it? As I've said, if your flagship product, the GT1000, it's not ubiquitous. I don't see loads of people using one, and maybe I'm just missing out on all of the people that are using one. But if no one's really using that, then the fact that you've put that thing into a smaller product, to me, doesn't necessarily mean that you've solved any problems. Anyway, also the big reason that I really love the Helix and the HX Stomp is the snapshot mode, which now that I've had it, I don't think I can go back to not having it. The FM3's got scenes, and this has, you can change 16 parameters at a time with a foot switch, but it's to me, I'm not going to figure out how to do that, am I? So yeah, that's the GT1000 and my bridge burning thoughts. Feel free to leave in the comments the things that I got totally wrong on this. I know there's going to be people that are a fan of this, so this is just my thoughts and my personal opinion. Given that some people have asked me to review it and I've spent my money on it, that's just my thoughts. It doesn't mean that it's not a perfectly decent unit, and I think there are definitely people who are going to get better results out of that than they might have an HX Stomp. Definitely you can have more simultaneous effects than an HX Stomp anyway, even taking away the consideration that some of them are EQs and noise suppressors. Even with those out of the equation, I think you can still have more stuff on at a time on this if you're into sort of crazy delays and reverbs and chorus and modulation all on at the same time. But I would take some kind of issue with the 24 simultaneous effects blocks thing, because it's not exactly that, is it? If you're really digging your GT1000 Core, let me know in the comments. This video probably wasn't for you, and I don't mean to diss the product that you're using, but yeah, these are just my thoughts and why I'll be sticking with the Helix stuff for now. Thank you for stopping by. If you want to like and subscribe, please feel free. This is the tricky stuff with giving your opinions on this sort of stuff. Inevitably I'll probably be wrong about some things, and I'll also potentially annoy a few people if they've spent the money on the product and they really dig it. So I'm not saying that it's not decent, and I'm not saying that there's not plenty of people who are going to get lots out of this. I'm just not one of those people. Cheers. Some cool things about the GT1000 Core, the patch level here, which you can change like per preset, so you can balance presets out quite nicely. Another thing which I kind of like is this stomp box thing. So here we're on an instance of a noise suppressor in this particular chain, and if you press this stomp box thing, you can basically select between your own stomp box presets, and so any changes you made to one of these stomp box presets would then also be affected globally, which is kind of cool.